The one up front. Next to the side.
Like we had a tree.
Like all in your middle in the back corner there, It's not a hot one now. Yeah, we're at it. Yeah.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have an interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IHO. Trinity Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive when we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion, or at least it's still the way that black people are. And I would say, and I would argue, especially black men are portrayed by the media incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the last year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
Hello?
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed to highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices as our ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that, and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible with choices in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices
It's up there. That's why I can't source that with everybody.
To have
That's
more
why.
people of color creating news stories. More people have that relates to the stories that you're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IHO.
This
Trinity Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive, get people heard. That's one thing that doesn't happen in so many places.
Yeah. Like, make sure that you got that. Hold on, don't move back. I gotta take it out.
Hello? Oh, sorry guys. Thank you everybody who's here tonight joining us for the school board candidate forum. We will be getting started in a few moments. The candidates will be up here at this table, so feel free to come closer if you'd like to be closer within the room. I know it's kind of spacious. Also, we have some sparkling waters, some snacks. Help yourselves to any of that.
Something in my eye. Yeah.
We've got some sinks in the room if you need to flush it out.
It's okay. I have mascara on. It's just going to get my eye all wet.
God. I always forget about that.
Yeah.
We live in a society in which structural racism is a very real thing. We are all dealing with that in every aspect of our lives, and the media is a reflection of our community.
Historically, black people have been portrayed a certain way in the media to justify normative assumptions around political and social issues.
More black people behind the cameras, in front of the cameras, more producers, more people of color producing, so they can go and get the content that's needed so they can highlight our attributes.
I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I've seen firsthand how our voices just aren't heard. Even if you're in the newsroom, sometimes you get completely ignored and stereotypes are allowed to perpetuate. And one thing we want to do is combat that and also bring information to people so they can be as informed as possible when choices are made in the city, so they can do whatever they can to get their voices heard.
What I believe can be done about the situation is to have more people of color creating news stories, more people who have a interest in and a social consciousness that relates to the stories that they're telling.
Charlottesville Tomorrow looks at these issues. We can present them on IMHO. Vinegar Hill Magazine can take that a step further, and just together we can just make this thing that can be an example of how we can change the media landscape, how we can be more inclusive to get these voices in, to get these people heard. That's just one thing that doesn't happen in so many places, and it's a shame.
We think we live in a society that's very progressive, and we're talking about equity and diversity and inclusion and all these things. Still, the way that black people, and I would say, and I would argue especially black men, are portrayed by the media is incredibly dangerous, and you've seen the sort of tangible violence that it's led to over the past year.
The community can support the SIM project by first and foremost giving us an opportunity. We understand that it can be difficult to give trust right now, especially considering the current social and political environment. But this project will only be as successful as the community allows it to be. And so we ask you to give us the opportunity to do the work, critique the work, and make sure that we stay in line with the vision. Another way that the community can get behind the SIM project is through engagement. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're talking about. We want to put your stories out there. And so whether it's reading the articles written by Charlottesville Tomorrow or Vinegar Hill Magazine, or tuning in to In My Humble Opinion on Sundays on 101.3 Jams from noon to 3 p.m., either way, we want you engaged. We want you to be part of this. The community can also support the SIM project through funding. To learn more about how to support SIM, you can visit our website. Thank you for your support.
How is everybody? Great. Thank you all for being here tonight. My name is Sandra Atlas-Poe. I'm the community organizer for Charlottesville United for Public Education. Our mission at Charlottesville United is to advocate for public education that meets the needs of every child and family while centering Black, Brown, and marginalized voices. We're excited to co-host this forum featuring 4 future school board members. As you can see here, we will hear their views and issues that are important to students and families and think about ways to partner with them for a stronger Charlottesville City Schools. This forum is just as much an opportunity for candidates to hear from you all as it is from you all to hear from them. This event is an example of ways that Charlottesville United works to center students and family voices. All right, and one thing that we did want to mention is that the bathrooms are down the hall, right here to the left, if anybody needs to use the restroom. We want to say thank you to the Jefferson School African American Heritage Center for this great space and for their work to honor and preserve the rich heritage of the African American community in our city and county. The Jefferson School first opened in fall of 1865 as a Freeman School and served Black students in various iterations until 1965. I'd also like to thank the team who made tonight possible and to all of you for being part of the conversation. I'm excited to get started and we'll hand it over to you, Angelique.
We're so pleased to partner with Charlottesville United for Public Education on this forum. My name is Angelique Shaw. I'm the CEO and editor-in-chief of Charlottesville Tomorrow. We are your local nonprofit news organization, and we hope that we provide a service that you all use and helps the community be as strong as it can be. October is a busy month, isn't it? I really appreciate you all for taking time to come, and to folks who are watching online as well. Thank you, in my humble opinion, for the live stream, and thank you to our media partner, Vinegar Hill Magazine, as well, for helping get the word out. It's not easy to participate in civic life when you have so many things to do, so many demands on your time, so many important things happening in the world. So I really appreciate you all for being here, because who will make our community what we want it to be except us, after all. Charlottesville Tomorrow really hopes to help make it easier for more people to participate in our civic life and be part of how we decide what happens in our schools, our governments, and our neighborhood. You'll see cards on your chairs for our voter guide this year. We're being really ambitious about covering Central Virginia as a region, and we hope that you check it out, and that we hope that it helps you as you decide who you're going to vote for in various races, and let us know how we're doing as we build. And without much further ado, I'm really proud to introduce you to your host for this conversation, Tamika Jean Charles. She is a dedicated local reporter who covers education and families for Charlottesville Tomorrow. She's also a 2023 fellow for the Education Writers Association. And from an editor's point of view, she's a joy to work with and one of the most sincere, thoughtful reporters I have worked with. So thank you, Tamika, for guiding us in this conversation, and thank you to the candidates for also being here.
Hi everyone, my name is Tamika. One quick housekeeping I wanted to add to what Sandra said. So when you guys use the bathroom, they asked us to walk back around to the front doors. So if you exit, you can exit here, but you gotta come back here. Also, warning, I do talk really fast, so if you're like Tamika, you need to slow down, just raise your hand and I'll repeat it. So again, hi everyone, my name is Tamika. I'm really excited to be here today. As many of you may know, I've covered Charlottesville City Schools for almost 2 years now. This school board election is a special one. So for the first time in 20 years, Charlottesville will have 4 event seats open. It hasn't been a thing since 2005. And luckily, you already have an idea of who will sit in those seats next year, because they are the only candidates who have been certified by the Department of Elections. This is not a contested race, but it is important that we take the time to get to know who wants to represent us in our public schools. Next to me are the candidates. had in order. So we have Chris Meyer, Nicole Richardson, Trevor Cooper, and Amanda Burns. So for you guys, I will direct some questions to each one of you. If you can, please keep your questions short so we can hear from everyone. And do feel that every candidate has to answer every question. I want to get to know you guys as much as possible. This will be pretty conversational. So yeah, let's get started. So just to start, can you each tell us about your relationship with Charlottesville City Schools, whether you're a parent, volunteer, or any other personal connections you guys may have? And there's one mic, so you guys can start however you like.
Hello. Hi, guys. So my name is Nicole Richardson. I am originally from New York City, and I transferred to Charlottesville about 2007. I graduated from Charlottesville High School in 2008. I have two boys who attend Charlottesville City Schools, Beaufort and Venable, and I do a lot of community work around Charlottesville, around County, the Haven, and Habitat for Humanity. I do a lot.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. Again, my name is Chris Meyer. I have two children in Charlottesville City Schools, a fifth grader at Walker Upper, and that went through Jackson Valley, and a second grader, a daughter that's at Jackson Valley. I did run for school board back in 2019. Was the good candidate that helped have some competition. It was very educational. I got to know a lot of people in the community. And over the last couple of years, even though it was not successful during that race, I jumped still back in and helped run the PTO at Jackson Valley. During COVID, I was one of the co-founders of the Joint PTO Fund that successfully, I think, raised $160,000. With a lot of other colleagues and parents in this room, that I think was actually inspiration for what the county is doing now a little bit with theirs. So I've done that, was very involved in trying to ensure that we got funding for the Beaufort reconfiguration and helped organize the groups of parents to show up at the city council meetings to make sure to put pressure on city council to fund that project. More recently, I am now a project developer for a renewable energy company in town that works on projects throughout Virginia, but also throughout the United States. And previous to that, I was an executive director of the Local Energy Alliance program for about 3.5 years. So looking forward to taking kind of all those skills and those experiences I've had so far and to help hopefully improve our school system.
Good evening, I'm Shamora Cooper, and thanks you all for being here. I have two children that have graduated from Charlottesville City Schools. My daughter that's sitting in the audience, and I have another daughter at home, and I have a son that is currently attending Charlottesville City Schools. I'm a community organizer. I'm a co-founder of Charlottesville UCOOP, Charlottesville United for Public Education. I wear many hats in the Charlottesville community. I'm from Charlottesville, born and raised, and yeah.
Hi, my name is Amanda Burns. Some of you may know me as Mandy. So a lot of kids will call me if you see me out in the community. I have two boys, one who will be 21 on election day, and the other who is 14. He's at Charlottesville High School. We have been through the Charlottesville City school system from kindergarten all the way through. And I work in healthcare as a healthcare administrator. I've been with Anchor Healthcare for 12 years. My expertise is really in project management, implementation, human resources, accountability, patient outcomes, and I'm looking forward to stepping into the city school space to kind of lend my expertise in those areas. In addition to the work that I do with the 100 Pets Initiative, that's a joint partnership with the House of Pets Barber Studio and the 100 Black Men of Central Virginia to provide free haircuts to children in middle school and high school. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for that. So we're gonna start off pretty hot. So the Virginia Department of Education released the standard of learning scores from last school year. It showed that a lot of Charlottesville City students, specifically students of color, English language learners, economically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities are still struggling with the transition from online learning during the pandemic to in-person schooling, on top of having less access to resources than some of their classmates. However, many of these gaps existed long before the pandemic. Amanda and Shaimora, in Charlottesville Tomorrow's Border Gap questionnaire, you both mentioned different initiatives that could help bridge these gaps with some of Charlottesville's most marginalized students. Could you elaborate on one way Charlottesville could change these outcomes? Amanda, yeah.
I think it's going to take a multifaceted approach, right? Because it's nothing new that this has been a problem and an issue, right? And I think until we start addressing social economic systems that, some of our parents struggle with, then we're going to continue to have the problem. And so what I would like to see happen is that we start engaging more parents. I think we need to start bringing more parents to the table because I think that component is missing. But we also need to create jobs and stuff that pays our parents because a lot of our parents are working 3 and 4 jobs to be able to live in this area. And so that is some of the barriers that some of our families are facing, right? And we also need to focus on early childhood education. That's a component that's missing, especially in the African American communities. And how do we start that, right? And I'm a big component of early childhood education because I've seen in my own family how it's have allowed my kids to be so much further in their education by starting at school at the age of 2, right? And so how do we create systems to support parents so that their kids can get that early childhood education? I think that Charlottesville, I've been reading and researching, they are doing some of the work. I see that Kendallwood, which is a new development that once was Friendship Court, just got a grant. I think it's for $800,000, and do not quote me on the number because I could be wrong, but to bring an early childhood education center into the community. And so I think that's awesome because I think that's the component that's missing because we do have early childhood centers, but can our parents get to those places? And a lot of those places close early, so therefore parents have to pick their kids up. And so that affects employment. So I think that we're gonna have to look at it and see how we can get more parents involved, but also support parents, making sure that they are working jobs that are paying them to be able to live in our community and supporting some of the economics that we face.
Thank you. I echo what Shaimora says, and then also think that we need to address not only the achievement gaps, but also address the threats of gun violence in our community, threats of physical harm, lack of affordable housing, and food insecurity, and transportation difficulties, and access to mental health providers and resources in the area. I think one of the ways we do that is by community partnerships and looking at who in the community is already doing this really important work and tapping into those resources. So organizations such as City of Promise, the 100 Black Men of Central Virginia, Ready Kids, the Equity Center, groups that are already doing this really important work to come in and work alongside our teachers and our staff because we know that they are doing a lot and it is a heavy workload on them, and the burden should not be placed entirely on our teachers and on our administrative staff. And as Shaimora said, we have parents and families that are working 2 and 3 jobs, and it is hard for them to show up and come to meetings and be engaged. And how do we do that in a way that still supports our students and our staff?
Okay, I got it. Okay. Hello, okay. Okay, Chris, in your questionnaire, you mentioned athletes here as one way to help improve test scores. So in that it works now. So yeah, you mentioned extending the school year as a way to help with that. So in that time, do you imagine having more curriculum or some kind of review? How do you expect to fill in that time?
Okay, so I think extended school year is a very interesting idea. It has a lot of sort of potential definitions to it. And I think that's something I think we should be studying and looking at as one solution to this. I agree with a lot of other candidates said. My understanding of how that could work is basically more around shrinking the summer period. You're actually staying on the same amount of school days total, but reducing that potential learning gap that happens during the 10 to 12 weeks during the summer, where a lot of kids who maybe aren't getting all the enrichment activities, like a lot of maybe their higher education peers, aren't as engaged, are again losing opportunities there. And so you have more smaller breaks, i.e. kind of like a spring break that's 2 weeks, a fall break that's 2 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, another week in here that also allows teachers to do more planning, etc., and allows them to take more breaks also. But you have a shorter summer break of, let's say, 5 or 6 weeks, or 6 or 7 weeks, not 10 to 12 weeks.
Okay, Nicole, you mentioned Charlottesville City Schools.
Wrong one mic now. Okay. Nicole, you mentioned Charlottesville City Schools' new gifted program. So for those who don't know, the gifted programs offer special programming for high academic achievers. In 2020, Charlottesville City School Board revamped its criteria for its program, and by the next year, over 86% of the students in the division were considered gifted. Nicole, how do you think this new model will help with raising student test scores?
Thank you. I think that new program will help students raise test scores because it's not really isolating individuals and taking certain kids out of the classroom so they can have certain time spent together or separate to work on certain items. I think it's crucial to keep all the children together and at the same pace. I feel like that's really important not to isolate anyone.
Thank you. Okay, next topic. So recently, Governor Youngkin released model policies that encourages school officials to seek parental consent on how they should address students' names and pronouns that are not on official records. Charlottesville City Schools' current transgender and non-binary student policy goes against Youngkin's recommendations. Chris, Amanda, and Shimora, neither of you agree with the proposed policies. Shimora, you talked in your answer about having a transgender child and the impact the model policy would have on them. Could you tell us more about why you think this policy is wrong?
Sure. So the reason that I disagree with the policy is, I look at it from a demographic standpoint that not all people are accepting of transgender and LGBTQ community. And so for some children, right, my thinking is that we have to support the child. And so for some families, the children have to have their sexual identity, or if they feel like, trans. My experience, my daughter didn't come out until it was COVID time. But I noticed, one of the things that I've noticed is some mental health stuff, and I didn't know what that was because, in the Black community, we're taught not to talk about it, that it's not acceptable. And so I had to deal with a lot of trying to figure out what was going on because she didn't feel that she would be accepted. It was a time where I had to deal with her almost committing suicide. And so that was a point in my life that I realized that, the fear that she felt to be able to come out to say what she was feeling and how she identified. And I can only imagine for some kids that may be having those same feelings, how it would feel if you was to go, or a teacher would go and tell your parent and it's not accepted. I feel like you put that child at risk if you don't know. And so that's one of the things why I don't support it, because not all people are accepting, and I wouldn't want to put somebody's child at risk because one day they say, I want to identify as he, she, or they, them, or she, her. But figuring out a way that maybe the teacher and the student can have that conversation together where that child feels supported. And so you can come to that place. No, I don't support that.
Okay, so Charlottesville's current policy actually allows students to have their chosen names and pronouns without consent from their parents or guardians. And this gives them power to decide when to involve their parents. Chris and Amanda, what do you think the school board should do to help protect this current policy?
Do we really need to change our policy?
Oh, no,
Help protect it. Well, as of this point in time, I do not think there is a court case against us that is telling us we have to change it. Now, there could be the case in the future that someone decides to sue us, but until then, I would say the best case might be just kind of lay low and we continue with our policy until someone decides, maybe from the state, but my understanding is also that they do not have an enforcement mechanism to force us to do anything necessarily. So, in as much we need to protect it, to a certain extent, I think maybe not doing anything is a way to do that. And I've been working in policy a long time, and sometimes just waiting things out, and then things change back to where you needed to be at. So that is one potential strategy we could pursue. I think we would want to talk to legal counsel. Again, if someone were to say we need to change our policy, and then we need to, again, work with legal counsel to figure out the best path forward to ensure that we're also not conflicting with state and federal laws that protect the civil rights of our students. Thanks.
Yeah, so keeping the same policy, but then also, I think as a school board, supporting inclusive curriculum for our students, comprehensive anti-bullying policies, support systems in place for students who maybe they would like to disclose to their family, but they don't feel supported or they don't know how that would be taken at home, and making sure that we have the right support systems in place to support them should they wish to do that. In a way that allows them to be their authentic selves and supporting them and empowering them to choose to be who they are.
Thank you. Nicole, you said that the mall policies are in the best interest of students' well-being in your questionnaire. Why do you think Charlottesville City Schools should be considered?
Hello. I wasn't saying that I think they should be considered. I was speaking as a parent and not a future board member. But like I said, I'm a mother of 2 boys that attend Charlottesville City Schools, and I do believe that parents should be involved in every conversation regarding their child's education, care, upbringing, and well-being. So I do think parents should be involved. That's the part that I was taking out of the policy, more so than all of the other restrictives.
Thank you. All right, next question. Charlottesville has seen a rise in violent crimes, especially involving guns, and it has had an immense effect on Charlottesville students. School board members voted to remove school resource officers back in 2020 and have focused their efforts on alternative safety methods, such as hiring care and safety assistants and adding additional infrastructural safety measures. Nicole and Amanda, what would you want city schools to do to help with students affected by violence?
So yes, acknowledging first that we do have an increase in violence and that it is affecting the children in our marginalized communities disproportionately. And so I think having a response within the school system that the police department communicates with the school system so that they know when these violent acts occur in the community that our children are living in, and that unfortunately some of these happen as children are getting off the school bus. We have to have a response team and an effort to make sure that our children getting off the buses are safe during that time. I would even propose that we have some of our CSA staff that are in the schools be deployed into those communities to walk children from the bus stops to their homes so that they feel safe and that they feel seen and cared for by trusted adults that they already know and have relationships with. I would support expanded counseling services and community outreach so that, again, when these things do happen in our community, our children feel supported when they do return to school the next day, because so many times these things that happen outside of the school do get brought into the school and they spill over, vice versa. What happens in the school spills over into the community. So I would like to see greater communication between, again, Charlottesville City Schools, our police department, our community outreach efforts to make sure that, again, our families and children are feeling safe in both spaces.
Can I get you to repeat that question?
Yeah, question was, where is it? What would you want city schools to do to help students affected by violence?
Okay, definitely I would suggest more support in the schools, counseling. I would like to see more social service workers in the schools, people who are degreed to handle these conversations for our students, as well as maybe more police, what I want to say, the word, but just more police around the schools so the children can feel safe when they're leaving and coming in, going as well. Thank you.
All right, Shaimora and Chris, you both said in your questionnaires that you would want schools to hire counselors such as anger management and trauma recovery officials. Could you talk more on the kinds of services you want to see in schools?
Thanks. So I remember when my child first started Jackson High, they had 4 counselors or mental health professionals to help that school. We have, I think, 2.5 right now. And a lot of that was, my understanding was federal funding that got cut. That was funding mental health professionals through Region 10. I would like to see us, well, I think we built up recently in the last budget, which was a good first step. We need to see more of that. And again, there's not only from the violence in the streets that we're seeing, but all kinds of stuff coming back from COVID where, right, there are a lot of children that are suffering and need help, and you see behavioral problems because of that in the classroom that disrupt all students' education. So getting more full-time counseling positions in these schools. We need to be looking for grants from, again, state and federal. I do believe the state budget included some additional funding for this, but making sure our budget ask is very specific for this next school year and asking the city council to fund, I think, what would be 8, 9 more mental health professionals in the schools, at least as a start, would help. Again, not only helping those kids process what things that are happening to them, but also I think also address potential reductions in violence, not only in those schools, but outside of the schools.
So yeah, I agree with Chris. And so I would like to see, I know for Charlottesville High School, right now, I think it's maybe 2 mental health specialists. One of those is from Region 10. And I know that Emily is doing an amazing job, but it's not enough. And so I would like to see more mental health specialists or people that's educated in trauma recovery, and just to support our students. We need to have social workers in the schools to kind of help kids deal with that. And then, you know, Charlottesville High School has over 1,400 kids, and 2 counselors is just not enough, and eventually they're gonna get burnt out. And so, you know, we need to make sure that our kids have that person to go talk to if they're having a bad day or if something has happened in the community. And we need a crisis support team. I don't think we have that. When something happens in our community, we need to make sure that we have people at our schools being able to talk to our children. We need folks that, you know, some of our kids are losing parents, grandparents that's raising them. Why don't we have support groups or people that's inside of the schools that can kind of help deal with some of that stuff, because that could be a huge trauma for someone that's losing someone that's really close to them. And, you know, the wait list for some of these organizations that provide that service is so long. And so our kids go lacking with that, and then we see behavioral issues. And so if, you know, the school could invest more money into that, then I think that's going to be an important piece to kind of getting our kids what they need.
I know, actually some of you mentioned having like police officers present at the bus stops and stuff to help with students. So I guess, what would, as a school board member, how would you build that relationships with students and the police? So students should, I guess, for those who may be scared of police presence, to kind of ease their nerves while trying to be safe.
So, correction, not every day getting off the bus with a police officer, but when these issues happen in our community, when there's a shooting at 10th and Page and our kids have to get off the bus at 10th and Page, that we have a response team that comes from the school to assist so that police officers don't have to be the first things that they see. We want people that our children know and are trusting. So they're the crossing guards, they're the CSAs that they know and they trust, their administrators, whether that's principals, assistant principals, or teachers, like this crisis response team that is at the school, also having one that's in the community to bridge that gap. Not that we shouldn't have relationships with the police department, we certainly should, but just wanted to correct that.
Of course. All right, next question. So after 10 years, Charlottesville City Schools finally secured funding to rebuild Buford Middle School. However, Buford isn't the only infrastructure project in need of funding. Walker Upper Elementary School will be turned into a pre-K center once the middle school is complete, but the school division still needs funding to do it. Shamora and Chris, what are some ways city schools could secure funding? As a school board member, how would you make this happen?
Yeah, so we need about $30 million. I want to applaud, who's got that in their pocketbook right here? That's what we're going to do. We're going to raise money right now. No, seriously, I want to applaud the school district last year when they got $17 million from the state that basically freed up more money in the capital improvement plan of the city council, city budget. I think it's really interesting and unfortunate kind of how schools are run in Virginia, where we have an elected school body that controls a lot on the budget, but the city council controls actually our infrastructure budget and our operational total budget number, right? I think there's been an improved relationship over the last years. I want to recognize that from the current school board members there to help the city councilors, you might say, understand the infrastructure deficit that has been there. Again, that is represented by how much the Buford remodel costs and the need to, again, have Walker pre-upper. I would like to continue, one of my resolutions to, I think, improve that relationship by having more frequent meetings with the city councilors, again, who ultimately, unfortunately, control our top line budget number, to help them understand the needs, whether it be operational, but also the needs of the pre-Walker school, so that hopefully they don't feel like when we're coming to them and saying, hey, we need $30 million, you need to increase the real estate tax rate, that they feel like they have, again, the gun to their head or anything like that. So I do think there's also the need by the school district to help the public understand kind of what we're looking at with the Walker Upper. I don't want to say the dire straits it is, but the needs it the improvements it needs and how much they're going to cost to make it the school that our kids deserve. So we should focus on doing a little more outreach and public education around that. Also, I think.
I think that, yeah, we're gonna definitely have to do some research and like maybe like some sort of campaign where we get the whole community involved to see if we could raise the money that is needed for that project. And kind of like we did with the Beautiful Project, it's like showing up and saying why this is important and advocating on behalf of Walker becoming a centralized early childhood education center. I think that we also have to start thinking outside the box and looking at ways that we maybe could apply for grants or other funding to be able to raise some of that money. But I think that we just gonna have to, as a board, gonna have to be creative and start thinking outside of the box and how we strategically work with the city to see how we can get the funding for that.
Thank you. And Nicole and Amanda, are these initiatives that you support? If not, what else would you consider the school board to do to get this funding?
Hello? Yeah, I definitely support the 30 million that was just suggested. And Shamar is completely right. We need to reach out in the community and try to campaign and get together to raise the money for our children.
Yes, of course I support raising the funds, but I also think there's some responsibility on our state leaders and our delegates and our elected officials as well to do some of this work and understand the infrastructure improvements that need to be made and holding them accountable for what they say on the campaign trail and what they say is important to them in education and infrastructure, that they have a stake in the game and that they are lobbying for the same improvements that we are on the local level.
Thank you. And look, we're on our last question because we are running out of time. So many people I talk to while reporting say that Charlottesville youth struggle with finding activities to do after school and during the summer. Chris, do you believe Charlottesville schools should implement more after-school sports, art programs, and extracurricular activities? As a school board member, how would you plan on making this happen?
I think the first thing is we need to put it in the budget. So you're looking, I don't think it's $50, $100, a couple $100,000 can get you, again, a number of different programs at the Beaufort Middle School and Walk Upper right now, and expand other programs out. I think we also need to think about holding some of the service providers we have at the moment for the aftercare program, for example, for elementary schools. There should not be wait lists. And kids should be able to, if you need your kid to get into an after-school program that's structured in industrial activities, which I think my child had a very good experience when they were in it. I have a child that's on the wait list, and that needs to change, and we shouldn't have wait lists. So how do we work with those partners to make sure they're feeling like they're adequately supported? You know, at the same time, holding them accountable to the services that our community members need. And that might have some awkward conversations, but you know, this is what our children need and deserve.
Awesome. And for everyone else, do you think it should be a priority as a school board member? For Nicole, Shamora, and Amanda. Yeah. Do you think it should be a priority from the school board, for the school board, I should say?
I think, again, this is a multifaceted approach and ownership of everyone coming together. And I think it's not just the school board, it's Charlottesville, the city of Charlottesville, and their ownership. It's quite honestly the University of Virginia. They hold a huge footprint in our area with over 27 collegiate sports. They should have a stake in the game as well. And I think it's fair to say that. I also support the YMCA and the good work that they do, and Parks and Rec for the city, the good work that they do, but it has to be a joint effort where we're all sitting at the table talking about what is important to us and getting on the same page as what those goals are and what that looks like, and the ownership stake that we all have in that.
I definitely agree that we should definitely be focusing on after school programs. The Boys and Girls Club really helped me when my kids were younger. We had a place to go. I actually worked there for a little bit, so I really enjoyed seeing our kids grow. And then eventually end up working there. So I think that's a great opportunity. We should really focus on that as well.
Awesome, thank you guys. So actually brings us to the end of my questions. We do want to have some time for the audience to ask questions. So really quick, are there any last words that you guys want to share?
I would just say that having lived, attended Charlottesville High School, I didn't go to the elementary schools, but when I started at Charlottesville High School, and just watching my children go through from elementary to high school, and one currently still attending high school, that I have an vested interest in the community that I serve. I've been doing community work for over 20 years, and so I'm passionate about the work that I do. And one of the two key components that I'm very passionate about is education and housing, because I think that they go hand in hand. And so what I would like to see, if I'm elected for school board, is that we invest more into our community, right? And so how do we get into our community? How do we bring school board into our community? Because sometimes it is difficult for our community to come to a school board meeting, because again, a lot of parents are overworked and underpaid. And so I would like for us to go into the community to see what the community needs. Oftentimes we sit around these tables and we want to tell the community what it is they need, but we need to ask the community, what do you need? What do you need for your kid to thrive? If your kid is struggling in the Charlottesville City school system, what do you need, and how can we help you? And I don't think those conversations are happening. And so until those conversations start happening and we start giving the community what it is that they need, and we're supporting the community, I think that we'll continue to have some of the problems that we're facing today. And so my goal is that I take a community approach, and I get into the community and I start working with parents and getting more parents involved to say, hey, what is it that you need? How can I help you, support you in your efforts to making sure that your child gets what they need?
Thank you guys. That wraps up our questions. So we will begin with audience questions. So if you have a question, I guess raise your hand or your card, and I will come with you with a microphone. That as well. Okay, I'll start off with this question. So the city recently agreed to purchase K-Tech. What is your plan for supporting career technical education in our region?
So we have a shortage of skilled laborers, we know that. And we know that we have great partners in the community that are doing this work. And so I think the school board, K-Tech, administrators, families, students, people who've had good experiences in that space, the onus is on them to share those experiences and share their success. And so we work with businesses, we work with our community partners to share the message of K-Tech, share the good work that's happening there, share student experiences at different community opportunities, forums such as this, school board meetings, community events, making sure that people are aware of both the adult opportunities and the opportunities for our students. And I think also exposing our students at a younger age in middle school and high school to start thinking before they get to high school what the possibilities of those careers might look like for them, because we know college is not always an option for every student, and so just making sure that they're successful in every space when they leave Charlottesville High School.
Yeah, I agree with Amanda, but I would take it a step further that once they go through these programs, that then we make sure that they're landing a job. And so we're including job readiness into some of those training programs, but also start thinking about outside of the box. So I just came from Indianapolis from a conference, and one of the guys there was telling his story about how a homeless guy came to their facility and wanted to learn how to fly drones. And so they found him a class that they were able to plug him into, and he went from homeless to making 6 figures. And the drone program, you can be 16 to get your drone license. And so I think we need to start being creative and thinking outside the box, especially with like technology and expanded technology. It's like, how do we increase our children's digital skills so that if their path is not college, that we're setting them up for jobs that allow them to make 6 figures in the future. And so I would like to start having those conversations and figuring out jobs. I know they have some programs like the CNA programs and stuff like that, but I think we need to start thinking bigger because, the cost of living is outrageous right now, and the cost of everything is going up. So I think we need to start thinking outside of the box of how we start connecting our children early and exposing them to other things outside of the classroom.
I'll just say, I know Albemarle is thinking about pulling out, and obviously that could be concerning as a big source of funding, and I guess we'll have to negotiate with them. I hope they continue to utilize the facility and share the costs associated with it. I cannot imagine shutting it down if Albemarle pulls out. I think it's something we need in the community, and we'd have to figure out a financial plan. We'd have to cross that bridge when it comes.
Thank you, guys. Another question we got was, so there are a number of things affecting teachers now. We have ongoing teacher shortages, and recently with Charlottesville and Albemarle, we have the teacher unions fighting for collective bargaining. So as a school board member, how do you plan on supporting teachers?
How do you plan to support the teachers?
Yes.
In their union negotiations? I appreciate the proactive, I think, constructive engagement the previous school board has had with engaging the union and supporting the collective bargaining. I imagine continue to support that. Look forward, I know they just, I think, formalized their bargaining unit. Look forward to discussing. I've had a conversation with the union president, and all the things that she listed, I think were very reasonable. And I at this moment don't see a conflict with any of the things that are requested. Me personally.
I'm always for discussing salary increases and making sure our workers and myself have the best insurance. So I'm 100% supporting them for that.
Sure. I do support the Charlottesville Education Association and their right to collective bargain. I think it's important that they have a unified voice at the table to talk about their working conditions, their benefits, their wages, their barriers to teaching curriculum in the classroom with behaviors and just different things that they're experiencing in classrooms. So certainly appreciate the work that they did to get to this and thank the current school board for the work and for listening and coming to the table and being open to that. It is hard to get to that space as we see with what's happening in Albemarle County right now. And I think there's something to be said about the good work that was done by our current school board to see that be approved and voted on.
Thank you. One question I did want to ask. So obviously, Charlottesville and a number of schools in in the country are dealing with bus driver shortages. That problem isn't new to Charlottesville, even a little bit prior to the pandemic. So as a school board member, how would you guys advocate for fixing the shortage or at least bettering the family responsibility zones in which students are walking to school?
My child rides the bus, and at our bus stop is a former cab driver. So I got very interesting stories from him around the challenges that bus drivers and why he left. I think the union president at the city council meeting, which again, city council, the city runs the buses, hires the bus drivers, got some very insightful comments around the concerns based on the union, which is a lot around salary and quality of life. They have to work multiple jobs. I think in my responses to the question as to tomorrow about this is, you have to think about the total compensation. Well, you might have $22, $25 an hour if you're only working 25 hours, 20 hours a week, and you don't get to do that during the summer. That's not going to pay the bills. And if you don't have vacation, that goes associated with that. You don't have health care associated with that. I mean, all those things need to be considered, and we need to make this a career. And it needs to be paid for like that. I think other neighboring counties have done that, and guess what? They don't have school bus driver shortages. Louisa, for example. So when I hear county officials say it can't be done or we're having a shortage, it's like, well, why is the county next door from us able to solve this problem?
Yeah, I agree too. That's the problem. Like, bus drivers are not paid enough money, and they don't work full-time hours. So figuring out how we create that position so that it is full-time and that they are able to get benefits, because that's important. And so maybe even looking at bringing it from under the city and bringing it to the Charlottesville City schools, and that the schools are able to govern it versus the city transit. I think that if we could figure out a way in their downtime that they can maybe help out inside of the school so that they are full-time and able to get benefits, then we may see some changes.
Yeah, I agree. Bringing transportation back under the purview of Charlottesville City Schools is the way to go. I think it's hard to hold bus drivers, leadership, school administration accountable when the city school district is really the middleman in all of that. And how do we negotiate salaries and benefits when they're not under our authority? We can advocate for them in a way, but it's not the same as them being our employees. And I agree with Shaimura. There are other spaces within our schools that could use the support and use the help during that time. I had the great pleasure of bringing breakfast along with the Walker United PTO to the CAP bus driver station, meeting several of our bus drivers. And what I hear over and over and over again is they love our students and they want to be there. And I think it is the responsibility of the school district to help them stay there and what that looks like for them to be there. And having, again, accountability is important, and leadership matters, and knowing who your leaders are matters. And I think there's just too much gray in that space right now, so I would support bringing that back under the school district.
Thank you. I'm just gonna pick at random now, because we have a few more. One question talked about chronic absenteeism and its impact on equitable test scores. I know, for example, Clark was accredited at a level 3 in terms of chronic absenteeism. So as a school board member, what would you suggest to help with students getting to school each day?
I mean, I think Shaimura said it earlier. We have to go into the community and ask why. What is the barrier? Why are the children not getting to school? What can we do to help? And again, we talk about this, parents who are working 2, 3 jobs. If you're getting home at 6 in the morning and you want to lay your head down, but you have to get your child up for school at 7 a.m., that's hard. And that's the reality for some of our families, regardless of whether that child needs to go to school or not. Working 2 and 3 jobs and then having to do that is hard. And they're tiny humans. They're not getting up by themselves. They need people to get them up and to get them ready for school and to walk them to school. In many instances, they don't have buses picking them up. And that's just the lift and the burden that we're placing on our community. But if we don't know what those barriers are, specifically if we're talking about Clark, they're tiny humans, so the onus is on the parents and on the community. When we look at Walker and Buford, more Buford, we have a little bit of an issue at Buford as well. I think that's a different situation. That's not necessarily as much on the parents as it is maybe on our kids, and what are the barriers? Are they afraid to come to school? Is there community violence that they're afraid to walk from 10th and Page up to Buford? Is there an underlying issue once they get to school? What does that look like? And really understanding, as Shamora talked about, what are the barriers, and then how do we address them when we learn what they are.
Awesome. Okay, so actually on topic of violence, I know you guys mentioned having CSAs at bus stops to help support students. So what else do you think, what do you feel can be done to help students feel safe and properly equipped to handle potential violence that may happen to them in or outside schools? Yeah, I guess what do you guys feel like can be done to help students feel safer and properly equipped to handle potential violence outside of having CSA support at bus stops? So I know, for example, I believe a while ago, Kim Powell suggested we learn like gun safety, to learn, I don't know if Kim Powell, but someone in the school system mentioned like learning gun safety and teaching students how to like just be more aware of it so they can better help themselves in a potential situation. So I guess, are there any other methods or things you guys would recommend?
I think just having conversations, right? So like having conversations in the community, having conversations with the kids, encouraging parents to have conversations, sending out information so that parents can start having these conversations with their children, you know, and having like providing safe spaces in our schools, or talking to kids and asking them, do they have safe spaces, right? If they don't, you know, figuring out how we connect them to be able to identify a safe space if they, and even if, you know, if they see something, to say something, right? And so like if you see something happening, or if you see that a kid is being bullied, to kind of being able to go to someone that you can trust, to kind of let them know what's going on. But I think that we need to start having those conversations and going into the community. We have a lot of community spaces, and I would like to utilize those spaces. How do we go into those spaces and start having those conversations with parents to talk about some of the things that we see, or some of the things that parents, that children may talk about with their teachers, or the guidance counselors or the mental health specialists, and start having those conversations so that we could figure out what is it that our children need, and then support them in that way.
Yeah, indirectly getting at this a little bit. There's an interesting podcast I listened to, Freakonomics, was talking about failures, and an whole section around school violence and violence in general, and how there's a logic chain basically of all these failures leading to one thing. But how do you interrupt that chain of failures basically that then can hopefully again stop the violence from happening, specifically around school shootings? And this I think probably reflects the outside of school shootings. And the main solution they were promoting was something, or it was basically a crisis helpline, but also basically training students to basically, if you see something, say something, and then have very clear points of contact within the schools of who do you go to. And they gave an example of, I think in Ohio, where a student found a bullet on a toilet in the restroom, and he went to 5 different administrators to tell them about that, and then the administrators quickly took action and found the video coverage of who was going in there, and they found a kid with 3 magazines and a handgun that was about, again, it was telling him a failed crisis stuff. But I don't know if that addresses the fear that, of course, we're constantly surrounded by, and even outside the schools, but maybe that could be a way to help kids feel like they have something they can take action on, and again, reduce the probability of actually something happening in our community.
Thank you. Follow-up on violence. Someone in the audience mentioned maybe implementing a resource officer back into Charlottesville High School. How would you guys feel about doing something like that?
I think this needs to be a very different than a police officer that is seen as there to enforce the law. My understanding is that it could be helpful to have someone that is trained properly to engage kids, to help with teachers with disciplinary issues, monitor the hallways, and to help kids not make bad decisions, you might say. And so, is that a school resource officer? That is a trained law enforcement officer? That's a policeman? I don't think so. Is that somebody else, though, that, again, is trained in how to engage with kids and be available to support teachers and not walk around with a gun on their hip, but, again, help keep the structure maybe in the school to ensure kids aren't getting in trouble, check the bathrooms, etc.? Yeah, I think that could potentially be helpful.
I mean, as I sit here and I'm thinking, this might be an extreme from me growing up in New York City, but has anyone ever thought about metal detectors maybe? If we're just trying to make sure that there's no weapons coming into school, guns, knives, or anything like that. But I don't really see that too much around here in the city, but that's what popped in my head for safety.
To add some context to that too, Albemarle High School just, the school board in Albemarle voted to reinstate SRO in their school, and they'll be working across schools. So I know this is a decision that some schools across the country have rescinded, but also are now trying to bring them back. So, add context to that. So another question we have is on school renaming. So as a school board member, will you guys review the current process and work to fix the deficiencies? As a school board member, will you guys review the current process that the school renaming committee does when looking at each school name and work to fix any deficiencies in that process?
Yeah, so if I could go back to the question previously about SROs in school. I have a very personal story about an SRO in schools. And I don't share it often, but I feel warranted and feel like it's worth sharing. My oldest son went to CHS when there was an SRO in school. And he was in an altercation, actually with a teacher. And it was dangerous for both the teacher and for him. And had Darius Nash not been there and in that space at that time, the outcome could have been very different for my son. And ultimately, he went through the city diversion program, and he spent some time over the Lugo McGinnis Academy under Dr. Jill Dahl. And he is a successful barber in the city of Charlottesville now. He was accepted to Coastal Carolina University. He graduated. He is thriving in the city of Charlottesville. And he would tell you that Darius Nash saved his life. And so I think we have to be mindful of who those people are in those spaces. And Tammy Shiflett is another police officer in the city of Charlottesville that you will see working football games. And I saw her this past weekend on Friday night and just had to stand there and kind of take that in, that our children still love her. And I cannot go to Shenandoah Coffee and see Darius Nash across the room without getting a tear in my eye because my child will turn 21 and he's not part of the system. He's not a statistic of another Black man who was put into the system and who failed. And so I think when we have these conversations, we really have to be mindful of who those people are in that space. And we have CSAs, care and safety associates, but we have to see that those roles are filled and that those people are trained appropriately to do the jobs that we've hired them to do. And I would encourage anyone who is out there, who is listening or who's here in the room, to look on our job board and see if you're qualified. And if you're not, let's talk. Let's get you qualified, because we have 2 openings at Buford Middle School, and that is where this starts. We have got to catch our students earlier than the high school. We've got to implement some of this change and this care and support in the middle school before they get to the high school. And so we have 2 positions that are open, and we have to see them filled so that our students are cared for and that our buildings are safe and secure and our administrators are also safe and secure, because that matters too. It's not just about our students, but our staff. We're asking teachers and administrators to step into dangerous situations that some of them are not prepared for. And we have to be mindful of their trauma and their response. We're walking into a generation where many of us have experienced firsthand gun violence and what that looks like. And we're asking our teachers to step into that space as well. So I thank you for letting me go back a step to kind of share that as we're looking at what that looks like. And thank you to Charlottesville Police Department, who shows up at our football games and makes sure that we're safe in our basketball games, and the good work that they are doing.
Thank you. Just bring it back to school renaming. Is there anyone who'd want to say something on the school renaming process? Yeah, so the question was, excuse me. So as a school board member, will you review the current process and work to fix any deficiencies in that? So I know a problem last year was when the schools tried to rename, they did rename Clark and Venable. They surveyed students, but those students' answers weren't considered in the final school board decision. And I know that caused a bit of controversy within the community. So I guess how would you guys continue to be mindful and work with those in the renaming committee to make it a more seamless process?
So I think that, I'm willing to look into and work to look at the policy. I have not really looked at the policy, so I would have to look at the policy the way it's currently written. But I do think that if we took the time to survey our children and that they came up with something that they agreed on, then it's our due diligence to stand behind that as a community, because we want to include our children in decision making. And so if we are going to take that extra step to include them, then the feedback that they give us, we need to take that into consideration and move forward.
And we're about to wrap up. So last question I have for you is, I just want to learn more about you guys' focus areas. If you haven't mentioned them already, so as a school board member, what will your biggest focus area be and why?
My biggest focus areas would be early childhood education. I think that's a major component. Mental health. I think a lot of our children are struggling, even parents, right? I think that we not only need to focus on our children, but we need to also focus on our parents because a lot of the times a parent's trauma can affect the children's learning abilities. And so making sure that we have wraparound services not only for our children, but including the parent. I think the parent is a major component of the child, but the parent is often left out, or the parent is not sitting at the table when decisions are made, or if they are sitting at the table, they don't understand. And so making sure that we have supports in place so that parents feel comfortable being in those spaces and asking the right question, and have parent advocates, right? We need people at our schools that are advocates for the parents, so that if the parents don't understand, especially with children with 504 plans or maybe IEPs, I've sit in spaces where for some parents, they just go along with it and it's not really what their child needs. And so making sure that we are supporting our parents and our students. And so it's early childhood education for me, mental health services, and parent engagement. And then also supporting our teachers is important because, our teachers deal with a lot, and I think that component is left out a lot. Teachers are not just teachers, right? Teachers are sometimes parents. Teachers are sometimes mental health specialists. Teachers are sometimes counselors, and taking that into consideration moving forward of how we support our teachers. How do we stand behind our teachers? Are we having conversations to see what it is that our teachers need? And are we supporting that, right? And making sure that we're creating that healthy work-life balance for our teachers as well, because our teachers go through things and our teachers have to deal with a lot. And so making sure that we support our teachers in a way that they're also healthy so that they can pour into our children.
I agree with everything that Shamar said. I would like to say also financial assistance. I think the school should also be a place where parents and students should be able to tap into local resources and gather that information in their schools as well.
Yeah, I am not a professional teacher. I taught some classes a little bit, but I'm not in the pedagogy to my colleagues. There were a lot of existing on school, like Dom here, that I think have a lot of experience. I'm going to be trying to focus more on the operational side of things, the funding side of things. How do we work with the city to maximize the budget, not only for the operations, but for the capital improvement, like the pre-K Walker, and have those. I think we have a challenging conversation with the city about operations, not only CAT, but our facilities and the management of them. And I want to focus my time and effort on making sure those operations are effective and efficient as possible.
I also agree with that. I know I already went, but I do also agree with looking at the budget and see where we are spending our money and seeing if we can tap into some outside resources and being creative on what's out there that we can tap into to bring more funding into our schools. So also looking at the budget and starting to think creatively on how we can bring more revenue into our schools.
Thank you. And so I probably echo Chris a little bit. I'm going to leave the education piece up to the educators and administrators who are doing the great work of that currently. And so my focus is really on clear and consistent communication so that we're putting out messaging early and on time, and that we are clear about what we are asking of our parents and asking of our students and asking of our administrators. I think transparency is important, that on the occasion that we get something wrong, that we say we got something wrong, and that we have the opportunity to grow and to learn from that. And then I think also accountability. We are elected officials here to do a job, as are the teachers and as are our students. And when we're not performing up to par, people should hold us accountable and let us know that we're not doing the work that we were hired to do. And I think that is across the board for our students, staff, and teachers as well.
Thank you guys so much. Let's give a hand for our new school board members. Not yet. After election day. In January. Yes.
So I just wanted to close out with saying thank you to each and every one of you for being here today. Thank you to our 4 candidates. You guys are amazing. Thank you for answering all of the questions and allowing the space and opportunity to get to know you a little bit more. And also huge thank you to Tamika. You are incredible. These are for you. Yeah. We do have pizza. There's cheese and pepperoni, so feel free to help yourselves to some pizza on your way out. Thank you all.
Yeah.